Hi, my name is Gabby and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about 5 ways in which YNAB has changed the way I manage my money. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we get into the video, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory on what my history with YNAB is. I have been using YNAB since about September, maybe August of 2022. Prior to that, I just used pen and paper for my budgeting, and it never really stuck to a method. A lot of times I would just pay my bills, always made sure my bills were paid, give myself some spending money, and just loosely kind of tracked, but not really. Once I found YNAB, everything changed for me. So it's really the one budgeting method that has worked for me, and it changed the way I handle my money completely. So much so that I'm not going to say forced, but I really talked it up so much that I got both my boyfriend and my sister into it. I also tried with my friend, but I didn't succeed with them. That's okay. I can't win with everyone. I'm not going to be able to convince every person in my life to do it, but I did try. But at least I got my sister and my boyfriend to use it, and they still use it to this day. I want to say for both of them, it's been over 2 years. Or close to 2 years. So we've all been using YNAB every day to track all of our expenses and to budget, and I think we've all done it successfully. The first way in which YNAB changed the way I manage my money is no account buffer. Before I started my YNAB budget, I used to always have a buffer in my account. It started off as like $100 when I was in college to make sure that I didn't have any overdrawn account or overdraft fees in case any bills that I didn't know about came through. The buffer really didn't have a job other than to just sit there in my account just in case. It started off, like I said, at about 100. It grew very, very slowly, eventually to like $1,000, and I think that's the max I had it at when I eventually found YNAB. That $1,000 was my zero. So if I had $1,000, I viewed it as zero in my checking account. Now, instead of having that buffer, YNAB makes sure that I fund all of my bills ahead of time. So all my bills are funded through the end of the month. All of my expenses like groceries and transportation and all my streaming and everything is funded through the end of the month. And so I don't have to worry about unexpected expenses overdrafting my account. And that's the beautiful thing about YNAB as well, is I don't have to worry about moving things around. All the money can sit in one account if I wanted to. I don't have it that way. I have a couple of accounts, but it can all sit in one account, and the different categories in YNAB is what tells me how much money I have to spend in that category for food or for rent or for my phone bill. So there's no need for a buffer, because I know that by having funded my budget in YNAB, I know that all of my needs have been met. In the event that I do overspend, YNAB does 2 things. If I overspend in a checking account or in cash, it forces you to cover it. You can't really move on without covering that. Or 2, it becomes debt if it's on a credit card. So there's no overdraft fee or anything. So there really is no need for a buffer in your checking account, which is fantastic, I think. I think when I did start YNAB, I still had a buffer line in my YNAB budget, if I remember correctly. But then once I realized how YNAB worked, figured out there wasn't a need for it. The second way that YNAB changed the way I manage my money is by finally getting a month ahead on my finances. So I had always heard of the concept on living on last month's income. I just wasn't ever able to put that into practice. And it wasn't until I started using YNAB that I finally was able to budget February's money into March's budget, I guess. So the way I budgeted prior to using YNAB is I took my paycheck that I got today, looked at my bills for the next 2 weeks, and just took care of that. And then gave myself money to spend for the next 2 weeks. And that's all I worried about. I put money into savings after that and then moved on with my life. I think what was a game changer for me is that if I am looking at like right now in February and I'm budgeting February's paycheck, is like setting a target for my grocery budget, and I set let's say $200 for groceries in February. I fund February, and then knowing that once that's taken care of, anything extra that I have, I can go in and start funding March, and then just knowing that that money's done and I don't need to fund anymore, being able to then take that extra money and throw it into March. But something about like meeting that target, just like it just like registered in my head that it's done. I got a fully green line there saying it's complete and a green bubble, and just like that gamifying like aspect of it. And I don't know, that just really worked well for me. And being able to just separate it month by month. I know some people put money into a month ahead category and then take the money out of that and assign it all. I go into the month itself and start funding that, because the other way has never really like clicked in my head. I've never really been able to figure out how that works, because in my mind, if the targets are already there, all I need to do is go in and just put the money in the categories, and then it's funded. So that's why I've never done it the other way, because I feel like the majority of people put money in a month ahead category. Anyways, that's a little off topic. So the YNAB feature of setting a target and then being able to go into the next month to fund those targets, I think that was game changer for me when I started YNAB. It just changed the way that I was able to budget and allowed me to get that month ahead and finally be able to live on last month's income. I love it. I love that when March 1st comes, all of March is taken care of. It adds an extra month to my emergency fund. So not only do I have I think my emergency fund is over 6 months. Not only do I have a 6-month minimum emergency fund, I have an extra month on top of that because all of next month is already funded. Okay, number 3, the concept of giving every dollar a job. I struggled with this so much in the past. I tried YNAB so long ago. Oh, I wish I could tell you what year it was. I don't even know. It was so long ago, so long ago, but I was like, I don't understand how this works. How am I supposed to know where my money should go? Like, I can't predict the future. And I just did not understand that you're like trying to prepare for the future. Do you know what I mean? With giving every dollar a job, that you're like sinking funds. I didn't get that concept when I first tried it 100 years ago. So what I used to do, like I mentioned before, is I would pay my bills. I'd give myself spending money. And by spending money, I mean just like general, like here's $200 for the next 2 weeks. And that was for like groceries and gas. And this was obviously when things were way cheaper. Groceries, gas, dining out, movies, whatever. And then I saved the rest. And then, of course, I always had to go back and pull money from my savings, and it was never enough, and I never tracked it. I never knew how much money I spent on groceries or going to the movies or gas or anything. It wasn't really a budget. I thought it was, I never knew how much money I spent on shopping, and of course, I ended up in credit card debt. Yeah, it was a mess. Like, I was into numbers. I was always like writing my numbers down. I just never stuck to it. The way I've created my budget is I have a category for nearly every expense that could come up in my day-to-day life. Obviously, that could change in the future and I'd have to reevaluate. I'm always making updates to my budget. Actually, when I do my next budget with me, I will have to be creating a new expense line because something's coming up, but we'll discuss that then. But for the most part, everything's in there. Like, even there's like a miscellaneous budget line for just things that don't quite fit in there, but that's what it's there for, it's technically covered. And so because of that, I am able to give every single dollar a job, whether it's for right now to be used today or tomorrow, or whether it's to be used in 6 months or next year or when I retire or whatever. I give every single dollar a job, and I like it that way. I don't like the feeling of leaving any money unassigned. I like to know that every dollar is working for me now or in the future. Even in the rare occasion that I'm not sure what to do with my money because of something that may be coming up, let's say in a week or 2 weeks, or I'm waiting for, to hear back on something. I'm not really sure what, the instance may be. I do have a holding category for when I get a little more information on that. But then the job of that money is to hold on and wait for me. So every dollar has its job all the time. No dollar is going to be sitting in ready to assign unless I'm waiting to film. So I think the last two things are probably the biggest changes that YNAB had in the way that I manage my money. And number 4 is knowing where every penny goes. I used to open my bank account or open my, credit card app and just be shocked at the balances. Just be like, where did my money go? Oh my God, how much do I owe? And now I'm not. I used to look at my accounts and I would glance at the transactions to make sure they were accurate, to make sure there was no fraud, to make sure I was charged the correct amount, but I didn't really register the amount that I was spending on things, I think. But now I enter in every transaction manually. I actually don't link any of my accounts. Every single account I have in there, and I have a lot because I do, as I've mentioned before, churning with like credit cards and bank bonuses. So everything is entered in manually, and then all of my tracking accounts are entered in manually. I reconcile everything manually. And the reason I do that is for 2 reasons. One, I split things with my boyfriend, so we put everything on one transaction and then we go through and figure out what's his, what's mine, and then we split it. We either split it 50-50 or we split it based on what we each got or whatever. Just kind of depending on, he spends way more money on grocery than I do, so I'm not gonna yeah. So there's that. And then the other reason being that I like to spend time going through each transaction and just spending more time with the money that I have spent, meaning that I go through it and okay, I just spent $80 at Target. Why did I spend $80 at Target? Okay, so 30 of those dollars were for household consumables, and this is what we got for household consumables. I spent $20 on a shirt, and then I spent $15 on a gift, and then this and this and that. I like to break it down and just really figure out what I spend my money on. And I know I spend a lot because I'm a spender, but it just helps me take it in and just spend more time with my money and what I spend money on. And I think that's helpful for me. It's just an extra step that I need. So it just helps me think about my transactions and my spending. And then of course, when I'm entering in my transactions, I always make notes on what I spent. I typically like 95% of the time I make notes of like what I spent in the little memo section. I put like, in my shopping, I'll put like, you know, Madewell purse or whatever. Or if I bought something on a discount, like for Black Friday, I'll put like 50% off for Black Friday, like Black Friday sale, 50% off, something like that. Because I track every penny at the end of the month, at the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, I am able to get an exact look at my spending, and I love doing that. I may not share it with the channel just because it's an extra video and then I get lazy or whatever, but I always take a look at my spending every single month and every quarter and every year for everything. So it's just good to know. I like to know where I'm at. And then finally, the fifth way in which YNAB changed the way I manage my money is by helping me prepare for future and large expenses. And I think this is probably the most important way, at least for me. In the past, I rarely prepared for large expenses, or future expenses, really. I was always in a rush. It was like, okay, I have 3 paychecks to get this trip funded. Let's do it. And then I was like, all right, I need to save $500 per paycheck and I can't spend money on anything else. But in reality, everything else is just going on a credit card. And so then I ended up in credit card debt. What YNAB has helped me do is just prepare for those large expenses and avoid being in credit card debt. Now, I did pay off my credit card debt prior to starting YNAB, but it just has helped me continue to not be in credit card debt, which I love. I paid off my credit cards in May of 2020, and I didn't start YNAB, like I mentioned, until August of 2022. So I had been credit card debt free for a couple of years before that. But just because you paid off your credit card once doesn't mean that you will always be credit card debt free. So in the past, I just, like I said, never prepared for large expenses. It was always a rush. I just had to cash flow, which I guess it's good, but thinking back on it, it was never a true cash flow. It was always like save as much as you can, but then the rest, I think, went on credit cards. When I created my YNAB budget, I did spend some time figuring out what some likely expenses were for the year and an amount that I felt comfortable with, or like an amount that I expected to spend for the year, and then use that amount to create targets or to budget with. That is how I prepared for those future large expenses. Then by being prepared for those large expenses, I actually don't feel any guilt or any kind of like panic when it comes time to spend that money. In the past, I always felt this like, it was like a buyer's remorse type of thing, even for something that was like necessary when it came time to spend that money. But because now I've been saving up for it, or because, I've had the money sitting there for a while, when it comes time to actually spend the money for that, I'm ready. I don't feel weird about it. There's some things that can be like an emergency that sucks and you don't want to do it, but it is what it is. Those are never fun. But yeah, I am a YNAB user. I use it all the time. It's completely changed the way I manage my money for the better. I can't imagine not having it in my life. I know some people think it's a little bit culty, and maybe it is, but there is a reason for that, because it is amazing. And people that don't like it maybe just haven't really given it a chance, because it truly is the greatest budgeting app. I've seen videos with like other budgeting apps and I'm like, nope. I've tried spreadsheets. Nope. I'm a spreadsheets person, but nope. I use spreadsheets to supplement my YNAB, but I don't think I could do it to replace it. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me in today's video. If you haven't done so already, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe.